I begin with an acknowledgement that at the heart of action on climate change must be profound respect for those who've cared for our respective lands for millennia, the Indigenous people across the world. I reaffirm our government's commitment to the inclusion of First Nations people in our climate change response and clean energy future, recognising that respect for Indigenous knowledge, cultures and traditional practices is critical. Friends, last year I told you that Australia was back, that we'd increased our NDC to a 43% reduction by 2030 and had made it the law of the land, underpinned by a transformation of our electricity system to 82% renewable by 2030. This year, we've been busy bringing those targets into reach. Last month, I delivered Australia's second annual climate change statement. Included in it were our national projections showing that Australia is within striking distance of reaching our point target and on track to beat our 10-year carbon budget. These hard-earned gains have been made by our efforts to massively boost renewable energy and our reforms to industrial emissions. These put a cap on pollution from our 215 biggest emitters, requiring them to reduce emissions to net zero by 2050. We've announced a landmark expansion of our capacity investment scheme to deliver reliable, affordable, renewable energy right across the country. This will more than double the amount of renewable energy and clean dispatchable capacity currently in our East Coast market. I'll be frank, this is more progress in Australia in the last 12 months than in the last 10 years. And while I'm pleased with this, I'm not yet satisfied, because there's so much more left to do. We've come so far, yet we find ourselves at the beginning, not the end. We need to look at this world with new eyes, because the world is not how we saw it in 1992. We need to find the means that are necessary to support those that need it the most, which means more support from more sources, more public and private sources. We need to strike a pathway to safety for a strong global stocktake. The global stocktake will show that we are not on track to meet the 1.5 degree target. We took a step forward with new language in the Pacific this year. All Pacific Island Forum members agreed to a transition away from coal, oil and gas in our energy systems, in line with the IPCC 1.5 degree pathway, and with a peak in fossil fuel consumption in the near term. We are being swept towards a dangerous course, degrees of warming that we must avoid and we must course correct. So while pledges are important, the world needs to back it up with action now too. We need all countries to commit to policies and programs to bring their targets in reach. The evidence of the climate crisis isn't just in data and in journals. It's the lived experience of citizens around the world right now. The area I represent in our parliament, Western Sydney, is suffering today from a massive heat wave, with temperatures reaching 42 degrees Celsius today. That's pressure on our emergency services, our energy system and on our most vulnerable. It's becoming more severe and more frequent, including for the communities that were built around heavy and high-emitting industries who built our cities and societies. That's why we've established the Net Zero Agency to focus like a laser on new clean energy job opportunities for our regions, to empower them to continue to power the world for generations to come. Climate change is the biggest threat to the prosperity and security of people across our blue Pacific continent. That's why the Prime Ministers of Australia and Tuvalu signed the Philippi Union last month, in recognition of the deep and long-standing connection between our two countries, and because we come from the same Pacific family who share an ocean and a future. Which is why we're proud to be bidding to host COP in partnership with the Pacific, and why I announced yesterday that Australia will contribute $100 million to the Pacific Resilience Fund to help our region respond to loss and damage with dignity and courage, in the way of their choosing, in a way that works best for them. It's why it's also important that every country's domestic decarbonisation is accompanied by those of us with massive renewable potential to share it, hence Australia's determination to become a global renewable energy superpower. Friends, now is not the time to drift further apart. We must look to our future and our fates and redouble our efforts to bring down our emissions and get our world back on track. Thank you.